Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're going deep. We're taking a really essential look at something I think touches, well, pretty much all of us, finding real connection,
Yeah.
genuine connection
Mm-hmm.
in this modern age.
Mm-hmm.
Our sources, they paint this fascinating picture, but also kind of frustrating, how dating, which, used to be maybe slow, human,
Mm-hmm.
it's now just accelerated into an algorithm.
It really is the paradox of plenty, isn't it? That's what the sources are highlighting. This profound tension. We're like constantly scrolling faces, right? Technically surrounded by millions of options.
So much choice.
Exactly. And yet, so many people feel this deep, deep sense of isolation. It's quite striking.
Yeah, and that tension, that's really the core of our mission today. We're diving into sources that explore why, when we do have all this choice, finding real love often feels like it's just perpetually out of reach.
Right.
We need to understand this modern experience of heartbreak. It's not always that sharp, dramatic rejection. Often it's described as more of a soft, persistent ache.
And that frames our whole analysis, really. We're looking at this crucial question, maybe for you, the listener. How do you actually stay open? How do you practice love mindfully when the speed of everything, the modern world, has just drastically outpaced, the human heart?
Mhm.
The good news is the sources do guide us. They show a path that fundamentally it prioritizes presence, being present, over just being efficient. That's the key shift we'll be exploring.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start with part one, the loneliness of endless options. I remember when dating apps first really took off, the promise was basically more choices mean more freedom, right?
That was the idea.
But what the sources suggest for many people is that the result hasn't been freedom. It's been, well, fatigue,
Yeah.
overwhelming fatigue.
Yeah, and that fatigue, it often goes unrecognized for what it is. It's what our sources are starting to identify as the soft heartbreak.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from one big disaster, one huge rejection, but from the sheer exhaustion of repetition. You put yourself out there, maybe you connect a bit, then you retreat or it fades, and then you're immediately starting over with someone totally new again.
Oh, I hear this feeling all the time from people I talk to. It's that exhaustion, that rotating cast of first dates, right?
Yeah.
They all just blend together.
Exactly.
And you find yourself having the exact same introductory conversation with like 6 different people in a single month.
Exactly that. And that constant repetition, it prevents anything deep from forming. It prevents roots. And the sources really zero in on the pace of modern communication here. That's where the disconnect happens.
Because love isn't supposed to be fast.
Well, love fundamentally has never been efficient. That's not its nature. Our sources describe it beautifully, I think. It's always been, human, messy, mysterious, half grace, half effort.
I like that. Half grace, half effort.
But the digital structure, the apps, the platforms, they demand efficiency. They demand performance. They demand speed.
So the very environment we're trying to find connection in is kind of structurally working against the thing itself.
Oh.
Okay? So if love needs slowness, needs that messiness, how do we actually do that? How do we implement slowness without feeling like we're slowing down so much we're going to miss out?
Yes.
Because there's that constant background hum, that anxiety that says, reply now. If you don't reply immediately, you'll just be discarded.
That anxiety is absolutely a defining feature of this landscape, and it feeds directly into that quiet ache we mentioned, that little voice inside asking, is it me? Am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
Our sources, though, they gently try to redirect that anxiety. They suggest that often it's really not you, it's just the pace of things. The environment itself dictates speed and performance.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then you have to be the one to intentionally disrupt that environment with mindfulness, with presence.
Wait, that's a perfect transition then. Let's get into part two. Practicing slow love in a fast world. Now, when we talk about slow love, just to be clear, we're not saying, reject all technology or go back to writing letters.
Right at all. No, the sources are very clear on this. Slow love isn't really a chronological measure like waiting 3 days to text back or something arbitrary. It's a mindset.
A mindset. Okay.
Yeah, it's about bringing a deep mindfulness, a real presence into the small gestures, even if that gesture is just sending a message through a screen or having a brief conversation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. How do we make that mindset shift practical, actionable?
Yeah.
Like when I'm actually sitting there looking at my phone, trying to compose a reply,
Yeah.
what does slow actually look like digitally?
Right. Well, it's a fundamental shift away from strategy toward sincerity. That's the core of it. So instead of pausing to calculate, the perfect time to respond to seem cool or whatever, you pause to check your intention. Why am I sending this? What am I trying to achieve here? The sources detail some specific practices. Like you actually try to listen for the meaning in what the other person is saying
Okay.
instead of just listening for your cue, for your opening to deliver your next performance.
Okay, let's ground this. Give me an example. Say I'm on an app, someone messages me, they like hiking. What's the difference between me being clever in my reply versus being curious?
Great question. Okay, so the clever reply is strategic, right? It's probably designed to impress. It might say something like, oh, cool, yeah, I actually hiked Kilimanjaro last year. The photos are amazing. You should see them.
Right, okay. A bit of a flex.
Exactly. It's a performance. It's designed to elevate your standing, create this sense of like artificial competence, maybe?
And the curious reply, how's it different?
The curious reply is seeking connection. It's about understanding them. So it's more open. It might be something like, oh, that sounds wonderful. What is it about hiking that you enjoy the most? Is it the quiet or maybe the physical challenge?
Ah, I see. So you're speaking with sincerity, even though that might feel a bit risky. Because you're genuinely interested in their experience, not just like projecting your own awesomeness onto them.
Precisely. And yes, it can feel risky, but that's the point. It demands a high level of presence, of being actually there in the conversation, which, as you said, is hard to maintain in a space practically built for rapid-fire distraction and, let's be honest, often for pretending.
Yet pretending to be the shiniest, best version of your
Right. So slow love demands an attentiveness that directly counters that strategic impulse we all feel. The challenge, though, and the sources highlight this, is how do you maintain that kindness, that openness, that curiosity without letting it bleed into a kind of desperate chase?
Hmm.
Because often that chase, that feeling of needing to get the connection, it stems from a place of deep fear. Which brings us beautifully to the sort of philosophical core of these insights.
Right. This takes us into part 3, the wisdom of wanting. And this idea of grasping versus desire. This is the really crucial distinction our sources are drawing, often from like contemplative or Buddhist traditions, correct?
Yes, exactly. And it's a powerful insight. The core idea is that desire itself, the natural human pull towards connection, partnership, wanting love, that's not the problem. Desire is healthy, it fuels us, it gets us moving. Grasping, however, grasping is where it gets deeply problematic.
Can you elaborate on that? What does grasping actually feel like, and how does it show up specifically in, modern dating?
Well, grasping is essentially desire that's become rooted in scarcity and fear. So desire says, I'd love to connect with someone. Grasping says, I can't be whole, I can't be safe, I can't be happy unless I secure this specific outcome, this person, this relationship, like right now.
Ah, okay. So when that longing comes from fear, it actually kind of contracts the heart, makes it smaller. I think I know that feeling.
Yeah.
That anxiety that makes you check your phone every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That compulsion to look at their profile picture again, or, analyze the punctuation in their last message for hidden meaning.
That analysis, that restlessness, that constant checking of the last seen timestamp, yes, that's the behavior of the mind trying to secure love. It's trying to force a timeline, force an outcome. But our sources emphasize love really has to be received. It can't be secured through force or strategy.
Okay, but I'm curious about the practice here. If someone is genuinely feeling that anxiety, that impulse to grasp, how do the sources advise they just stop? It sounds simple, but anxiety doesn't just switch off on command.
That's such a critical point. And you're right, it doesn't just switch off. The practice isn't about magically eliminating the anxiety. It's about transforming the anxious impulse itself into an intentional pause.
Okay, how?
So when that familiar restlessness bubbles up, maybe your hand is literally reaching for the phone to check if they responded. You use that movement, that impulse, as the trigger for the practice. You notice it, you pause, you deliberately set the device down, maybe just for 10 seconds, and you consciously breathe.
Oh, I love that. Using the anxiety itself as the cue. It's like honoring the feeling without necessarily obeying its command.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here, the sources suggest, is that this tiny practice, this pause, is the moment where you choose to honor your own solitude, even just for a breath, instead of constantly fleeing it. And every time you consciously choose that pause over the compulsive check, you're actually building trust. Trust in your own timing, trust in your own inherent worth, independent of external validation.
Wow.
Now, The sources are realistic. This doesn't suddenly make waiting easy or fun, but it can make the waiting peaceful. You exchange that frantic, grasping search for a quieter, more trusting anticipation.
Peace, not validation.
Mhm.
That feels like a huge shift, a really tremendous distinction. And I guess once we start shifting our focus away from frantic validation seeking towards more internal peace,
Hey.
that naturally starts to shift what we look for in other people too, right?
Precisely.
Which brings us to part 4, redefining value.
Exactly. It's like a natural consequence. Our sources really reflect this wisdom gained through often difficult experience. The priority fundamentally shifts. We start moving away from prioritizing, say, glamour, the perfectly polished profile, the high status job, the exciting lifestyle.
Right, the shiny objects.
Yeah. And we begin prioritizing gentleness. Connection starts being sought based on things like kindness, genuine curiosity, and what one source beautifully calls shared becoming.
Okay, I need more on shared becoming. That sounds profound, but what does that actually look like on, say, a second date? How would you recognize that?
Well, it's kind of the opposite of looking for your other half to complete you, right? Shared becoming means finding someone who seems genuinely interested in growing alongside you, someone who accepts that neither of you is finished or perfect or totally predictable.
Okay.
It's about the potential joy of evolving together, messiness and all, rather than trying to find some static, pre-packaged, ideal person who ticks all the boxes right now.
That feels like a much quieter kind of appeal, doesn't it? Compared to the loud noise of, like, instant dramatic sparks and that overwhelming chemistry we're often told to chase.
Absolutely. And that's why this counterintuitive finding in the sources is so important. Stability isn't boring. Stability is safety. We're often socially conditioned, I think, to see stability as maybe monotonous or dull because it doesn't have the high-stakes drama of the chase, the uncertainty.
Yeah, rom-com drama.
Yeah, but the sources completely reframe this.
Doesn't one source define stability as the necessary soil? Something like that.
Precisely that. Safety, when it's shared between two people and consistently practiced, becomes the soil for joy. It's only when you feel genuinely safe enough to be truly yourself, flaws and all, that real joy, real laughter, real vulnerability can actually take root and flourish.
That makes much sense.
So the revised criteria for a partner becomes much more practical, maybe, more humane. You start looking for someone who is present, emotionally awake, capable of laughter, but also forgiveness, and importantly, someone interested in life beyond just the glow of their screen.
And the ultimate test then, according to these sources, it comes down to the emotional temperature,
Yeah.
the feeling, the difference between that noisy, instant attraction and recognizing something deeper.
Yes. Deep love, the kind that actually lasts and nourishes you. It feels calm. It's not confusing. If a connection is constantly leaving you feeling confused, agitated, second-guessing, frantically trying to interpret intentions, that's probably the noise of grasping or maybe just incompatibility. True love, as one source puts it, feels like peace. Just peace, with another heartbeat beside mine.
Wow. That sense of inner calm is the signal.
Yeah.
It really does bring us full circle back to that idea of presence. Okay, let's move now into part 5, trying to synthesize these ideas into some really actionable reflections for staying open. For you, the listener, to take away.
Okay, so we've got 3 crucial takeaways distilled from the sources. First, trust your timing. This is really the practical application of letting go of that grasping we talked about.
Right.
The sources offer a simple, grounding truth. Love that rushes rarely roots. We have to cultivate patience, allow for it, recognizing that the universe, or just life, isn't actually short on opportunities. It's almost never too late.
Okay, trust timing. Got it. And the second point tackles those connections that don't last, the near misses that inevitably happen on this path. The instruction is to stay curious, right? Not self-critical.
Yes, exactly. Instead of immediately labeling them as failures or beating yourself up, asking, what did I do wrong? You're encouraged to use them as moments for honest self-inquiry.
How so?
You ask different questions like, okay, what did this connection show me about myself? Where have I maybe grown braver since the last time? What kind of tenderness or intimacy am I truly ready for now? It's about extracting the lesson before you just discard the experience as worthless.
That connects really beautifully to the third point, which is the need to honor solitude. Because that quiet time when you're not connecting with someone, it's so often seen as a problem to be solved, usually by more scrolling or distracting activities.
Right. And the sources advise treating that quiet time not as an empty space you need to fill immediately, but as a teacher. Actively allowing boredom sometimes, letting it ripen into stillness, maybe taking tech-free walks, or just sitting quietly without an agenda. This is how you gradually loosen that compulsive craving to be chosen, to get external validation. You gently remind yourself that you already belong right here in this moment, regardless of who is or who isn't texting you back.
That's powerful. We also have to touch on rejection, though, because that's often the moment when the grasping mind really tries to grab the wheel again. How do the sources suggest we hold rejection more lightly when it often feels so personal and heavy?
The key instruction is to try and depersonalize it as much as possible, recognizing that, honestly, most of the time, rejection is just life redirecting both hearts elsewhere. It's rarely a fundamental judgment on your inadequacy as a person.
Right. It might just be about timing or compatibility or where they are in their own journey.
Exactly. And rejection starts to lose its power over us when we stop grasping so tightly for that external validation in the first place. When we really start to internalize that our worth, our okayness, was never waiting on anyone's recognition. It was always there.
And that leads to the final point about the gift of the almosts, those near misses we mentioned. They weren't failures after all. They were necessary data points.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the whole journey, including the waiting, the uncertainty, the almosts, it's all a form of profound self-discovery, if we let it be.
So believe in connection, but maybe release the pressure for perfection.
Precisely. Believe in the possibilities, stay open, but let go of the need for it to look a certain way or happen on a certain timeline. Every near miss, every connection that teaches you something, it clarifies what safety truly feels like for you. It shows you, as one source says, what kind of tenderness we're truly ready for. And that learning, that growing awareness, that is the ultimate sign that you are genuinely open.
What a truly profound, I think, and practical guide for navigating this incredibly fast, sometimes confusing world. It really does circle back beautifully to that core idea.
Yeah.
Love hasn't vanished. It's not gone.
No.
It's just quieter now, maybe? Less like a frantic pursuit, more like patient observation.
Yeah.
Almost like it's waiting for us to slow down enough to notice it, in the stillness, in the gentleness we learn to offer ourselves first.
Well said. And that leads perfectly, I think, into our final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. Real love, the deep, sustaining kind. It was probably never meant to be found in the frantic flurry of endless options or the constant noise of performance and self-promotion. Maybe it was always meant to be discovered right there in the stillness between the distractions, in that quiet space where we finally stop performing and just start being. And as long as you stay curious, as long as you are learning from it all, love remains profoundly and truly possible.